everyone, it's Sevi. If I haven't mentioned it before, Geo characters have always been favorites of mine. In fact, I've been a Geo simp ever since Zhongli's first run in version 1.1, since his character trailer is what really pulled me into Genshin Impact. And as for the most recent additions to Geo, Ito and Yunjin, I also have very good opinions on them. Now, the arrival of Dendro reactions has brought out some new potential in various units and elements in the game, though unfortunately, the Geo element has been left in a somewhat awkward state. More so, Geo's CEO Zhongli is now on another rerun, so some players who don't have him may be wondering about his pull value. And so, for this video, I want to share my thoughts on Zhongli and the Geo element's place in Genshin's future. Before Dendro, Zhongli had long cemented himself as a top shielder character and an almost must-have for some teams that desperately want the shield. Several Yoimiya teams, Melt Ganyu, and Ito's Mono Geo team, among others. In fact, his shield is so good that it simultaneously makes players play worse and better. Worse for some, because it makes us too reliant on his shield, which can make us feel vulnerable without it or get used to not dodging. But also better for others, because if you find yourself doing less damage due to getting interrupted or becoming too paranoid of taking damage, Zhongli allows you to play more comfortably and confidently. Aside from his shield preventing interruption and damage, it also universally shreds enemy resistances, and his meteor can petrify enemies to give you some breathing room. More so, there are various ways to give him more supportive utility for those who'd want to expand his potential. You could give Zhongli supportive artifact setups. He doesn't need expensive weapons to be a great support either. And aside from supportive roles, Zhongli has various playstyles you can explore, which you can check my full guide for more info on. I've been seeing comments again recently about how Zhongli would be a DPS loss because he just doesn't have much personal DPS, his burst animation takes too long, and he can't enable offensive reactions. While those may be true to some extent, that's only relevant to players that want the fastest clear times. But for a player to be able to use their teams with his protection, you could argue Zhongli indirectly actually lets people do more damage than they would have without him. All that considered, he was regarded as a very good pull for anyone in need of those defensive and supportive utilities. Now, while many of those evaluations still hold true, the arrival of Dendro has brought in some new considerations. Starting with the good news, Zhongli isn't completely irrelevant to Dendro. Because Dendro can't be swirled by animal units who use the Viridescent Venerer set, Zhongli is one of the ways to shred enemies' Dendro resistance at the moment, aside from the new Deepwood set. But the biggest consideration if you're debating between pulling Zhongli and saving for other characters of other elements is the opportunity cost and future proofing. Of course, personal preference matters the most, but apart from that, we can think about this from the perspective of team building and elemental synergy. With all the new team possibilities popping up, there's barely any talk of Zhongli being as recommended in them. So far, the one new team that I find him to have decent synergy with is Tignari's Quicken team. His cooldowns perfectly line up with Tignari's rotation, he allows Tignari to fire off charged shots with little to no worry, and he provides both Electro and Dendro shred in that team. But even then, he's not exactly a must-have there. Most of Dendro reaction teams already require at least 3 different elements, occupying 3 slots already. That 4th slot can just be a DPS pick instead of choosing a defensive character like Zhongli, or a battery pick like a second character of an element already in the comp. Zhongli barely contributes anything new and simply just does what he's always been doing. Optimistically, you can sort of view him as a character whose previous value will remain rock solid because his top-notch shielding for players and characters that need it will always be useful, and his elemental resistance shred is universal. If you are a lower AR player who would just want an overall comfortable experience in going through most of the game's content, I would still recommend Zhongli to you. But if you're trying to make the most of experiencing the even more expanded potential of reactions, spending Primos to pull Zhongli now might feel like a missed opportunity down the line to instead get more characters that can enable more team possibilities. So that's Zhongli. But what about the rest of his element? There are 3 elements that don't have reactions with Dendro: Anemo, Cryo, and Geo. Yet, out of all 3, in relation to the new Dendro reactions, Geo is getting the short end of the stick. Anemo characters, despite being unable to swirl Dendro, still have relevance in the new reactions. They can contribute a lot by swirling and applying Electro, Hydro, or Pyro, thereby triggering the new Dendro-related reactions. More so, Anemo units already love EM, and as we know by now, EM in Dendro teams is the name of the game for dealing more reaction damage. Cryo units, on the other hand, are also still viable additions to some Dendro teams, since they can help freeze enemies and keep them vulnerable to bloom damage in a fridge team. But Geo has been a very neutral element, which is a double-edged sword. It gives it that degree of universality, but also limits its synergy with other elements. Some would even argue not to treat it as an element due to its lack of any quote-unquote real reactions. That level of neutrality and lack of elemental synergy has been more exacerbated with the arrival of Dendro teams. Geo has been like an accessory rather than as core members to many reaction teams, or more extremely, it functions best in its own mono Geo teams. We've already seen the 3.1 roster, but we haven't heard of or met any upcoming Geo character. At this rate, Geo's finally overtaken by Hydro. If you think about it, it's weird trying to predict what future Geo characters will be like. Right now, it's mostly characterized by having an increased emphasis on defense scaling abilities and by performing best with more of itself. So will future characters capitalize on that even more? Given the lack of any new reaction synergy, how will future Geo DPS and support units function? Looking back at the trend, when Ito was released as the premium 5-star Geo DPS, the direction was solidifying towards higher raw damage multipliers since Geo didn't have access to offensive reactions. Goro further encouraged the mono nature of Geo by having a kit that required 3 Geo characters to take full advantage of. In contrast, Yunjin was one Geo support that had some degree to synergize with other elements due to her very niche normal attack buff that doesn't rely on what element the character is. She was a good attempt at breaking away Geo units from their own mono Geo meta, but that is more a result of her kit. So what will the next Geo character look like? Will Hoyoverse create someone that can somehow work a special way with the new Dendro-focused teams, characters, and reactions? Will new Geo characters simply continue filling the same purpose they did before? Will they dig an even deeper hole in the pit of mono Geo-focused teams? Or is it possible to get an EM-focused Geo support, like a supercharged version of Albedo's EM buffing passive? The future is bright for every other element besides Geo right now. This isn't to say that there's no more reason to pull for Geo characters, nor should we just stop using Geo characters altogether. But the question is, how can it find new ways to break the mold and renew its relevance? We'll have to wait and see. So those are my thoughts on the topic. I'll always be a fan of Geo, so I'm hoping we'll see it flourish in the future as much as the other elements have. But what do you think Geo's potential for the future looks like? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon. Take care!